Okay, we're a minute or two past, so we're going to get going. So, welcome everybody to our May 14th Tech Talk. I'd like to thank our Tech Talk sponsor, Open Janela Software, great supporters of this activity. So, we really appreciate that. So, today, I want to welcome Jonathan Jomo Layton from Layton Consulting. Layton Consulting has been a phenomenal Fenestration Canada partner and member. Very, very pleased with the level of participation and support that they provide to us. So Jomo chaired our Fenestration Canada task group that worked with the City of Vancouver and the province on the energy modeling guidelines, along with several other stakeholders. We had people from NFRC and FGIA, and Jeff Baker participated with us, working through some of the challenges. So Jomo has taken us to a very good result in making calculations for size-specific values, really efficient, really simple. So Jomo, why don't you go ahead and show them what we've got, and then we can talk a little bit about timelines.
Sure. Yeah. And if I can, I'll give just a little bit of history on what brought this about. If you wanted to dig into that a little bit, is
Sure.
just
Yeah, you
we
bet. Yeah.
yeah, we had this change in the building code, the 2018 version. So we always had the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guideline referenced for, you know, calculating energy efficiency. And there's a little snippet about windows in there, but it was nothing overly specific. The VBBL had kind of different pathways for compliance, and then well, obviously we kind of relied on the NECB. And then this wording change happened in the building code. I got it here, 10.2.3.4, where it said if there's a discrepancy between the NECB and the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guideline, then the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guideline governs, which basically was like, okay, well, no, it's already hard enough to get people to read codes and bylaws and everything. So
Yeah.
nobody read the NECB anymore. And it just had this really weird wording that said, we don't want your certified values, where you want the worst case scenario. And that just, as you know, and as many different manufacturers know, the it's just an overnight headache of like, well, how do we find out what is accurate or not, right? And how
Yeah.
are we proving our product is performing to what the specification wants? And just came up with this headache of trying to get things done that had already been sold. So it was like, well, what do you mean my project doesn't work? Sorry, well, I will stop Teams for a second here, so we don't have that anymore. Good. There we go. So active office, guys, as you can see.
Yeah. And it was really confusing because in that clause there was like three different paths you could take that were in one clause.
Yeah,
It talked about labeling and size specific and averaging. Very confusing bit of language.
yeah. So our overall goal was like internally, we'd already been doing some site specific reporting, and in consultation with Jeff Baker and some other parties, like you said, NFRC, we know there's math that existed out there that said, okay, we could take our certified values and we can scale them to get, all right, now how do I stop these? Ugh, go to notification settings. Give me a second here, folks. All right, we're gonna figure this out on the live, but yeah, what we were figuring out that we could scale the values. And so even though we were already doing some site specific reports and stuff, I think that the second side of that came in was the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guideline almost made it sound like we don't care if you have certification, but certification is valuable. It gives you the information, and it actually is one of those things that kind of protects our industry. So we're like, well, let's double down on certification because you have other parties that want to come that don't have product that's approved for the Canadian or North American standards. And they kind of came up with this tool in combination with some of that math, and we're in the process of getting it ready to go and release for everyone to use.
Excellent. Yeah.
So yeah, you want me to kind of walk through how this whole
Yeah,
thing
yeah.
works?
Let's go through the tool and show everybody how it works, what it does, and then we can talk a little bit about the future that's not too far away, actually.
Sure. So the idea of the tool is basically to walk someone through a deliverable. That's really what it is, right? I'm setting up the whole thing where at the quoting stage or bidding stage, you can take your certified values in and also have it presented and related to a specific project. So project name, as you can see, I've kind of built some things already playing with this, but we'll call it Jomo's Jomo's Tower, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
And then we'll just put in an address, 555 Golden Lane, whatever you want it to be. And we have these things where we can add different images. So for this one, if it pulls up in the proper window, I'm not sure what's going to happen when I'm sharing, but I can add a project picture. Oh, it did pop up. Well, let me navigate over to it when it finally populates. But at the same time, so I'm just going to put one in. Then we could put in a manufacturer's name. So hopefully there's no company called Bill's Awesome Windows I'm going to get some angry email about. But, so we're just populating all the information. And if there's a manufacturer of a window system and then a dealer who's local, you can add as many as you want. You can also add a logo into this. So I'll just put our company logo in here. And then, if you add multiple manufacturers, you're going to take them away. It's really simple to kind of make sure that stuff is accurate for whatever this specific project is. And then you just click next step. Now, this is the IGU data. And so I'm sure everyone on the call is pretty familiar, but this is what we would be our center of glass value based off what like window calculates, like 1 meter by 1 meter. So it should be true no matter what manufacturer is using it. And but this is what the manufacturer's filling out from the glass that they're using in the particular window that's being on this project. I have tried to open this and shut it off. I cannot figure that out.
No worries. We'll
So
try not. We'll try
yeah,
not to read your office
yeah, it's
chatter.
okay. It's just saying, what are you doing right now? Yeah. So here's the name. This is like what your glazing tag would be. So GL1, whatever they have on their shop drawings or what they specifically put on for their manufacturing process. Then you're going to have your different glass type. So this is kind of the common combinations that we've seen: dual glazed, triple glazed. Then I've added like the VIG sealed unit combination, which is kind of an exciting thing that we're seeing come down the line. Or other, if none of them fit, you can type in what your type is. But let's just go with like a standard dual glazed. Or actually, let's do it. Yeah, let's do it with two OEs. So you'd have a surface 2, surface 4 kind of thing, and then you'd write your makeup. So you'd have like low E. Maybe I'd put like 6 mil low E SN68, 12.7 mil argon, 90%, and I'm only putting like this would be. Each manufacturer may have their own different way of listing this, but this should match what the label has of what the different glass you're going to use. So this would be like 6 mil I-89. And then you would pick either metric or imperial for your values. And then the values are going to be what you'd find off of window. And then where I know we've talked about some common values, so manufacturer could ask the IGU manufacturer for this information. So I don't have it in front of me. I'm just making this up as we go, but let's put some stuff in here.
So before you move on from that, I want to talk about it a little bit.
Yeah, go
Um,
ahead.
so you can obviously add as many as you need. You can
Yeah.
just keep building sealed units. The data, we talked about this the other day. the values that you would put in would be the values that are in the insulated glass database from LBNL.
Yeah.
So, where to get those. And if you're not familiar with window and therm, that can be a little bit challenging. If you have NFRC reports, you can find those values in those reports, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
So you need to make sure that those values are being pulled from for the best accuracy. They need to be pulled from the insulated glass database.
Yeah.
Um, we
And it
did
could be
talk a little.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, we
No, no,
did
go ahead.
talk a little bit about getting those values from your glass supplier. Um, that's doable, but again, for the best accuracy, because the evaluations through NFRC or CSA are using the data from the IGDB, that's the best data to use, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Exactly.
then laying out the makeup. Again, everybody might have their own way of listing a sealed unit makeup. But the key there again is that makeup needs to be the same makeup as the product that you're pulling from your NFRC or CSA
Mm-hmm.
database,
Mm-hmm.
right? So just a couple of things that for accuracy and for details that you need to know when you're building your IGU.
Yeah. And that's, I'm right now I can like pull up, I'm like
Yeah,
looking at the
sure.
IGU on the side here. So this isn't entirely accurate, but what these values essentially will match what the spit out is at the bottom of the IGDB when you calculate it, or it's also knowing that we need this fundamental information, when you go to do your certification or when you are, tell your manufacturer, hey, this is what we're going to need. Like we kind of now are setting the precedent of this information needs to be in here. So
Right. Yeah.
there are common ones that I think that we could organize in a way, and especially as an industry, if we like, hey, 85% of the time this is the glass I'm using. Okay, we
Yeah,
can
for
make we
sure.
can make
Yeah.
that information.
Could you pull that data from the IGDB and build a drop down maybe
Yeah,
potentially,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
So version 3.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And as you said, you build as many as you need. So, different glass types, it's gonna different um, you know, if you have any Brits or paints, opacity
Yeah.
coats, whatever it is, you have as many as you need, and it'll just mark them as per what your glass type is. And then the product data. So this comes specifically from that certified value. So it's the certification that gives you the numbers, kind of those file numbers. If you pulled up like your NFRC CPD number or your CSA number, it would be those values specific to related to the glass that you've now listed. So
Right. Yeah.
the glass,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
And you've practiced with this before, where you forget to go change the glass data, and then you put
Yeah.
the
I
frame
tried
data
using a
in.
triple and a double and it didn't work. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
So so you need to, yeah, for sure. Okay.
So here we're just putting in, 1000 series fixed window. Again, however naming system that you're using internally, and you go to the drop down and you're going to select the appropriate window. And this is based off of the CSA and NFRC sizes that certification is used in. So there's every single one of those on here. And then you just pick your different certification path. And so what's going to happen here is you're either going to have a CPD number or CSA listing number. If you go to not available because it's a European number or not, it'll just redirect to FenCanada. You can't move forward with the tool. There's nothing you can add here. So you need to have one of these numbers, and that's also going to correspond with what's on the label. So
Yeah, and that forms part of the validity and the ability to sort of back check the data, right? We want
yeah,
to make sure that you're using a certified value from either CSA or NFRC so that those values can be verified.
yeah. Now this is not the real naming. I'm just pulling this out of the air,
Yeah,
but yeah,
sure.
whatever your CPD number is to that thing, same thing here, metric or imperial. Um, if you only had metric numbers before and you have imperial values here, it doesn't matter. It'll switch back and forth. But here we'll do like with the frame. I'm gonna just uh, put some stuff in here. So we've added a fixed series, and we can add the same thing. We can add a casement. We can just continually add more and more windows that we use. And so this should cover all the windows and door package that goes into this specific building. After that, we go to the geometry. And so there's two choices to choose from for this. We can either do a whole building mode or elevation mode. So the purpose of this right now is that, let's go to elevation mode. We are actually forced to select an elevation first. So you may use the same fixed window on every elevation, but you could isolate what the thermal performance is, an average thermal performance for each elevation, to essentially give you the ability to say, maybe this isn't the appropriate window on the west south facing side compared to the north and east. I'm thinking specifically on a solar heat gain, but to also show, where is it going to be most effective based on the orientation to exposure and so on, which is a question we already deal with on towers every day, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So this now, if you get into this and you're like, my project doesn't need it, I accidentally picked the wrong one, you just switch back to here, full building, and then you don't have that elevation selection. So I'm going to just keep on this one. We'll do north. I've only got the one product, GL1, and now I'm going to pick my quantities of this. So as you can imagine, and I'm sure everyone on the call, you're going to have a lot more than just one sized window. And I think that's what was kind of frustrating with the interpretation of the energy modeling guideline, is someone was dictating, okay, well, that window is your worst performing. And we're like, well, that window's not representative of the entire project.
The
How can you,
majority potentially, yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
how can you pick
Yeah,
that one window? So here
yeah,
you could have, a really large window, and you might have, I don't know, 12 of these on there, and you can add a tag if you're living room, main room. I've got a different things I've picked before, or just like W2, W7, whatever you want to call it. And that would should correspond probably to your drawings or your manufacturing fabrication drawings. So we add that. And then on that same elevation, I've got north, got this, my IGU, and I could have, kind of more realistic, I guess. And I could have, 29 of these or 200 of these or whatever it is, right?
yeah.
So I keep building all those. Uh, I'm just gonna, even though I've got only one window. Oh yeah, and that same thing with that. So, 36 inches. Same thing. And as you can imagine, the more that you've built, the more IGUs you've built, it kind of continues down. Sorry. I need to get like one example that I just run, so I'm not always having to like come up with something on the fly. So you just continue to add and add and add as you go. And eventually we get to a summary page. And so right now I only have one, and I can go back if we want to, but product data, you'd have the fix, you'd have casement, you've had sliders, everything listed, and it will give you, this is averaging out all this geometry of the different elevations, or as a total whole, to give you what your overall U factor, your overall solar heat gain, and your overall visual is permitted for all of fenestration on the project. This one is just, this other numbers are based on your total on east or north, or have every elevation. So this can get populated quite quickly with the looking for the bold to say, okay, identify each elevation. Again, if you didn't do the elevation, it would just be just the total, and then the bottom one, it would just be the total. But I think the coolest thing at the end is, once you've kind of filled this out, everything has worked, you have a basically report, and you'll be able to provide this with project name, the address, the date it was generated, the different manufacturers or dealers, all your IGU data is in there, all your product data is in there, your geometry data is in there, and then you'll have this summary report at the very end of it to say, like, this is how my project is responding or is going to perform on this particular project. So what we see is this being actually like attached with or on with your certification reports. So rather than like, yeah, all my stuff's good, here you go. It's like you can verify with the CPD number or the CSA listing number right here. You can verify that this is the actual product that you got. And it's essentially helping the whole industry kind of rise up to we're all playing in the right sandbox. We're all meeting the building code requirements. And this is not a Vancouver only solution or BC only solution. But look at this as being something that's reinforcing the standard we've already had to do, whether begrudgingly or not, but that we can use those values to help us find out, in a very, I would say, conservatively accurate, because we have a lot of discussion on accuracy, which I'm sure we'll have following this, but conservatively accurate number to be confident on your bidding stage so that you're not getting slapped after we've manufactured windows, being told that doesn't meet or that I want that Windows value, right? So
Yeah.
that's kind of
Yeah,
it.
no, that's great. Um, so I know that we talked about having an option in here to be able to break out like kind of one product at a time to show what
Yeah,
those values are. But if you wanted to, you could simply build, because this is obviously really fast. Like you can do this once you're familiar with where you need to go and the data. You can build a product in minutes
yeah,
and compare the values, right? So if you needed to know that, my 10 by 8 2 panel patio door, what's the U value of that compared to the standard 2000 millimeter patio door, for example, right? So it'd be
yeah,
quick to do that calculation.
yeah,
That's not broken out here right now. This is taking into account averages across the board for those different sizes, based on your NFRC product model size.
yeah,
So
yeah. And if I'll
cool.
switch it. Okay, so I switched it here, like because we only have one product, so this is giving a value of all of the different average sizes and quantities because it's both, right?
Right.
It's the size and quantity, so that the impact of each size, okay, averaging the impact of all the sizes in one product type.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is the
And
value that we're getting as that window, as all the windows would perform over the full project. So you could imagine that if you wanted to, you could, yeah, absolutely just check one window and
just
see
do
how it's
one.
going to do.
And that's I mean, that's the beauty of this solution, because you could have a project that has, several small windows where maybe your performance is not as good,
Hmm.
and then offset with several large windows, come back with an average. Now you've met the project specs overall, right? And that's kind of the key. Um, I worked with one of our members on some aluminum patio door systems, where he had NFRC model size data. I think the U value, was somewhere around a 1.7, something like that. And we ran a bunch of product that was, quite a bit larger, like 8 by 10 kind of thing, 8 foot by 10 foot. And, the U values came back at like 1.4. I mean, that's
Yeah.
significant. And
Yeah.
that's where, some of these guys have been, significantly penalized using NFRC data and getting into projects, running into problems. So a slick tool. Really appreciate the work you guys have done on it. So where are we at today? Like, let's maybe talk about where the tool's at,
Sure.
and our next steps with it.
Yeah, I think the first part is it's obviously user generated in. Like we've tried to build in some way for verification, but there's a little, garbage in, garbage out, and having the right
Yeah.
information, like your IGU information. There's no standardized process to go and double check what those center values. This really is, I think, the preparatory version of a tool that exists in the future where there's more select from um, mm, standardized information.
Yeah,
And
from some verified maybe
yeah,
drop down menus, because today, and I certainly don't encourage this, but you could build a sealed unit, with unrealistically good performance, because it's a plug number that you're putting in there,
sure.
uh, and falsify your performance, for example.
Yeah.
there needs to be some verification of that data that's being put in. But I think for version one, I think we're looking good. Like you say, as we move down the road into updates, building in additional verification techniques and tools will be part of what we do.
Yeah, and I also think well, the way I've looked at it, when once I realized, like I think it was 2022 when I kind of wrote that paper, brought it, I think it was brought up to you first, actually. I said, hey, I see a big problem. And Dave Goldsmith was like, yeah, of course
Yeah.
there's a big problem, there's
Yeah,
always a
indeed.
problem. Yeah, yeah. But
Exactly.
I realized it wasn't a Vancouver issue, it wasn't a BC issue. It was like we actually have manufacturers who have pulled out of the BC market because they're just like, man, all this headache. And I'm like, it's actually not a headache if we can embrace it as an industry and say, hey, we want to kind of unify in how we approach this. We can actually see where our products are performing, and it kind of pushes innovation the right way, or whatever you want to say. But like you were saying before, on the small window, like, we got manufacturers who have bid on projects. And the architect decides they want this tiny little bar of windows at the top, and not understanding the impact that that's having overall. And yet
Yeah,
their spec is written, give me a 1.22. And I'm like, there is no product on the earth that's going to get you that. Like, you've
yeah,
you've
yeah,
designed something inappropriately. So this is like, version one is like, hey, if we can get the industry to understand how this works, and this is actually a deliverable that can be read by each other, kind of verified, we can start to train cities and inspectors to like look for this information. Then all that information becomes way more powerful, and it also reinforces kind of what I know in our task group, what we're looking at for next steps, and also with in a FenCan approach. But the what is it, natural resources, what are they?
NRCan,
Yeah,
NRC,
Enercan. Thank
NRCan.
you. I was like, I
Yeah,
forget the
yeah,
acronym. There's too
yeah.
many in this industry.
Too many of them.
But
Yeah, for
yeah, but
sure.
saying like, hey, we want a CSA database. And I know NFRC's been open to finding ways to like plug in their information, but all of the relevant information is built throughout the certification process. And we're like, hey, if we can get everyone to say, yes, we want to do this, we see the value of it, then let's work with Enercan and building this the certification validation, whatever you call it, CPD, for lack of a better acronym, another one,
Yeah, yeah,
to
yeah,
feed into this, to be able to make it so that we trust it as the outputs. So
yeah.
yeah,
Exactly, exactly. So, a little bit about the city of Vancouver. I know that you touched on it already. The task group has been talking for probably 2 years ish, something like that.
mhm,
Um, City of Vancouver was very amenable to us when we started saying, "Hey, there's a problem here, and you guys are asking for things that that are maybe not reasonable or not realistic, however you want to look at it." So today, very recently, we've seen the next version of the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guidelines. I believe it's 3.0, I think.
yeah,
And they now are including language that references this tool as well as the NFRC tool. If anybody's not seen that, NFRC has a tool on their website that will evaluate one product at a time. So that's another way that you could do this. So they've approved this tool and that tool. They are telling us that they anticipate an update to the VBBL on September the 15th of this year. So after that point, this tool will be a compliance path tool for compliance to the Vancouver Building Bylaws Energy Modeling Guidelines. So that's great. And then the province as well has been involved heavily in these conversations in our task group. They are, not to put words in their mouth, but they're telling us that they agree, they accept what's going on, and the logic and the tool that it's providing data that is acceptable. And they are telling us they plan to do an amendment to the BCBC probably early in 2026, maybe the end of this year. But we all know how stuff can move slower.
Yeah,
So, in the next 6 to 12 months, this tool will be a compliance path in British Columbia for evaluating size specific products. Um, we've also been talking to the people in Toronto that run the Toronto Green Standard program. It's interesting when we were speaking with them and talking about what was happening in Vancouver, and they were not completely open to the conversation. And then Adrian did some digging, as Adrian does so well. And the Toronto Green Standard actually uses the City of Vancouver Energy Modeling Guidelines language.
that's
So
funny.
we're confident that that we might be able to have this tool be a path compliance tool for the Toronto Green Standard as well moving forward. And then who knows where it goes from there. Obviously,
Yeah.
the goal is to make this a nationally accepted tool and pathway for size specific thermal performance for windows and doors.
Yeah. And I think just to touch on, like I totally agree. The city of Vancouver was fantastic. Once we I think we had an audience and had more than, it wasn't a manufacturer coming, right? It was
Yeah,
FenCan
yeah,
and
for sure.
other parties involved that were like, yeah, we really rely on some of this data, and now nobody knows what they're asking for. But one of the things that we actually kind of went over was, and this is where I wanted to get on the conservative accuracy, is there was no standard for weighted average, even though it's something that they've had in their wording for probably a decade of
Yeah,
area
yeah,
weighted average, and there were so many different ways that we were seeing it. And I think with those of us, West Tech and or no, West Lab, well, Jeff, but
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
there are manufacturers who followed the same way, but and us who have been in the simulation, we kind of put our heads together of like, what's the most accurate that we can be. And when we're modeling, we're trying to take into account where you have combined mullions, combinations. When we're doing site specific, I can get really complicated. And we're like, how, and that could take like 2 days, 2 or 3 days on a tower to all run all these simulations. Some of that's even like if I had to generate all the models from scratch, that can take a lot longer and be, costly. And I know I've talked to some manufacturers who find out that their products that they quoted can't hit it, and it's sat with me for a week and a half to try and finish something. And it's like, that's the values, like
yeah, yeah.
how can
That's
we
what you
make
get.
this,
Yeah,
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 how can we make this
yeah,
faster? And so we kind of tried to standardize um, weighted average, where we're saying, what is the relative impact of what's in there. And so what that needs and what it will cover with this tool is any product that's certified. I'm not getting too far into the leaf process or whatever, but you can have your reinforced and insulated, your non-reinforced insulated, your insulated, like all those products can be in there with the relative information. So you're as correct as you possibly can be. What it's not going to cover is some like additional external reinforcing. And at this tool right now, and we will have obviously a user manual and some guidelines videos to help people, is that the combinations are split out into each individual
yeah,
component.
yeah,
So there is some overlap of the mullion. What that means is that it's calculating conservatively, but we've run several analysis to see how close we are, and we're like 1 or 2%. And so the way that we approach the tool right now is like, hey, it's going to solve 85% of your worry. So don't drop it because you're like, well, what about this one specific thing? Okay, that one specific window, call up, get your simulator, call out a sub, anybody, we can deal with that. But like for the majority of most projects, they're just trying to get through the hoop to say we're confidently like, yes, we can meet the project specification. We're good to go. And that's where we're at with this. So
yeah. The conversation around accuracy. I mean, that went back and forth, over several meetings. What's close enough, right?
yeah.
Certainly not to bash the simulator industry, but you can have two simulators model something and be out by a percent or two,
Yeah.
right? So close enough is close enough. And as you mentioned, the majority of this was within a couple of percent at
Hmm.
the outside, right? So it was very, very close.
Yeah.
Um, we made the city of Vancouver and the province aware of some slight variation. They did not have concerns with that. Again, because is 1 or 2% going to impact the performance of that building in the fenestration? No, it's not even going to be
Yeah.
close to being a problem, right? So we're happy with the quote unquote accuracy of the tool. Lots of testing was done along those lines to see where the numbers fell. Talking about the reinforcing and the mullion question, it certainly, it too got a lot of conversation. Some people, their opinion is there's little impact. Other people think that there's more impact. Obviously, when you're talking about metallic frame systems, aluminum thermal break systems, the impact is going to be less
Hmm.
if you have some reinforcing and a mullion, as opposed to maybe a PVC frame where you have, steel reinforcing or aluminum reinforcing in that mullion. Those numbers are still yet to be sort of,
Flushed
scrubbed
out.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It is something we're discussing and hope to somewhere down the road include a way to evaluate those
Yeah.
reinforcements in this
Yeah.
tool. So it is something we're looking at.
But I will say with the new process, which is becoming mandatory with NFRC, the leaf, like I can model certify your reinforced every type of reinforcing, so you know what as long as you're selecting the right window, which
Yeah,
again should match your label, then then you're going to get that data. So yeah, there's definitely more work. There's other versions, but again, I like you said with the cities, relative to all the other materials that are on a project, like
yeah,
your
yeah,
effective R value, well, you put a hole in it for a vent, like
yeah,
1 or 2% difference, right?
yeah,
Whatever it
absolutely,
is.
absolutely.
So
So,
yeah.
so that's great. So, the tool is close to being able to be released.
Mm.
Um, we're hoping that it'll get put up on the Fenestration Canada website. My hope was to have it before the AGM, but I got a hunch we're running out of time on that. But
Yeah.
hopefully, early summer, maybe in June sometime, this tool will come up and be available for people to at least start to work with it and play with it a bit, maybe provide some feedback to us if they find things that aren't quite right. But as far as being a, you know, legitimate compliance tool, we're looking at least September for Vancouver and probably somewhere in the end of the year for the province.
100%. Yeah. And that's what I think is the most encouraging is recognizing that we're gonna right now as a task group we're trying to break it. People have
Yeah,
already come up with stuff of like this didn't calculate right. Why am I getting an error here? Um, a lot of it is just user input right now, which is
yeah,
errors,
yeah,
which is going to happen inevitably. But the fact that it's being embraced as a certification pathway and to really say to people, or not certification, sorry, an
yeah.
approvals pathway,
Validation or
validation
yeah,
pathway,
yeah.
to say there's nothing else, like if it
Yeah.
isn't this, we're back to the one-on-one,
Well,
my
and that's time and money, right? I mean, you
yeah,
can do
big time.
size site specific modeling, but you know, thousands of dollars and potentially, weeks of delay potentially, right? So
Yeah,
this is, I mean, you talked about a project that you worked on early in this process, and you compared it to, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but it was like a week of modeling work compared to about 3 hours of input work.
yeah.
So pretty significant efficiency and cost saving. The simulators might
And at
not
the end
like
of the
that, but
no, but at the end of the day, it's reinforcing. What I like the most above everything, it's reinforcing the existing certification path, and it's actually helping teach everyone better of what those values actually mean, what they actually represent as like a human being, the end user,
yeah,
and to make us think like can you actually specify a low U value and a high solar heat gain, and like what are we actually getting when we're asked to provide that window? So that's what I think. It's a future look of
yeah.
using the
I mean
data, right?
that the solar heat gain conversation is so critical because I mean there's so much focus on solar heat gain and changes coming in the 2025 NBC. They're going to be looking at that. Um, a model size window and its solar heat gain is not the same as a window that's 2 or 3 or 4 times larger.
No.
So, I think that that's been an issue as well, where modelers and EAs are maybe using solar heat gain labeled values
Yeah.
into these great huge facades on the west side of a building and cooking the occupants, after they move in. So I
Yeah.
think this is going to go a long way to evaluate those elevations and the solar heat gain numbers when you get into larger glazing.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, any questions out there? I see somebody's in the chat. Let's just pop that. When's it going to be open to members? You can get the link and play with it now, correct, Jomo? You're
Yeah.
sharing
I
the
mean,
link?
I didn't share, like you can see the link's been shared with the task group. So if you just request email Fen Canada, I will say that is currently it's not at the state that I would go use the report to verify anything,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it is to play. We will have a version that will come out. I didn't hide the URL, so you literally could type in the URL and
You
put it
could go
in.
and play with it today. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So feel free, if you have questions, you can reach out to myself or Terry, and even I'll even, I mean, at some point we're going to do a walkthrough. Like, I know what's going to happen. I get
And
all
a
that.
user manual, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah,
we're working on a user manual for it too that'll help people work their way through it. I mean, you kind of talked about breaking it, and there are a few things that can easily be done that will generate some bad data or generate errors. So those are things that we need to make sure people understand. And that kind of goes into this, making sure that you're putting in correct IGUs as per what the model product is, for example, right?
exactly. Yeah.
I broke that early on in the game where I was trying to run a triple in a dual, and it broke right away.
Yeah,
So
if you shouldn't just switch out your IGU, and like, it's got to be sequential, right? Like, this is the
yeah,
IGU
yeah,
that matches that frame. That's the frame total value, or the window or door total values. And then, because we have those knowns, we can essentially use math, for lack of
yeah,
a better term,
for sure. Yeah,
to,
yeah,
to scale to the size. Yeah, but there's a whole future of configuration and building. I mean, this is the free tool, right?
yeah,
This is,
yeah,
if we
for
get
sure.
people on board with this and they're like, yeah, I won't use it to try and break it, or to try and get my, sell my lower end product, we'll put that.
Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah,
I'm using it
yeah,
to actually see where I'm performing on projects, and we
yeah.
adopt it. There is a future of this that is super beneficial, and I think will just put us ahead of the game on relative impact to the actual project location orientation,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
rather than, yeah, my number, here's my number, it's good.
yeah.
Right.
And I anticipate that as this becomes a compliance path, a compliance tool, there's going to be pretty significant scrutiny on the information that is being
Sure.
put in. So, like you say, if there's a manufacturer out there that thinks they're going to start manipulating numbers to show that their product is better than it is,
Yeah.
um, we'll be watching for you.
We'll find it real quick. Yeah. Well, that's the beauty of
Yeah,
it being a FenCan tool, right?
yeah, for
So,
sure. We'll
yeah.
definitely be monitoring what comes out of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody? All right, quiet group. That's okay. So yeah, hopefully we'll have this on the FenCan website soon. Watch for an announcement because we'll definitely be publicizing the fact that it goes live. Hopefully soon. I would expect end of June at the latest. And then September is the September 15th key date for Vancouver. Later this year, early into 2026 for the province. And listen up for other activities with other regions that we've been speaking with, because we want to push this as a tool for this problem, quote unquote, across the country. So okay. I want to thank Open Janela, our Tech Talk sponsor. Appreciate their support. Jomo, I want to thank you because you have been just a rock star in this process.
Thanks.
You've put in countless hours to help us work through this, getting the tool put together, getting it built with your team. So, really appreciate your work, and looking forward to getting this thing live, and
Me too.
looking at version 2, 3, and 4.
Me too.
Excited for where we end up. All right. So thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate everybody's time. Have yourself a great rest of your day. We'll see you in Halifax, hopefully. Jomo, I'll
Yeah.
see you in Halifax.
See you there.
All right.
Take
Thanks,
care.
everybody.